This is a wooden box filled with several things that I made mostly with silicone, and I'm going to show them to you and talk about them, and that's what's going to happen now. So let's do that. So here is the first one. This is a tube of silicone, 1-inch outer diameter vinyl whatever tube, and inside it it's got DAP Ultra Clear silicone, and then inside that I use some Elmer's clear glue and some gelatin and highlighter fluid, which is fluid that I made by soaking a highlighter in water and then putting the gelatin in it. So, and there's a little bit of a process. First you put the glue in, let it cure for a couple of days, and it sort of sets up a little bit of cavity there. And then later you inject some of the gelatin in there, the highlighter fluid gelatin. And I do that in 2 steps. I cool this down in the freezer, and then I warm up the gelatin to so that when it gets in there it sets up really fast. And then I do that again for the second color to try to keep them a little bit separate. Now it doesn't really stay as separate in this one, but still cool, I think. Sort of a bulbous, floaty, bubbly flame sort of thing. That's what I'm going for, and you know, whatever. It is what it is. It's pretty when you put a light on it, sort of, or at least something. Maybe not pretty, but yeah, I don't know. I think it's pretty, but it does make you go, "What the hell's that?" So that's the whole point. So that's the glue, and that was one of the first things. Well, not the first thing. That was actually after several, weird trials and shit. So yeah. So what else we got in here? Now this one is a larger tube. I'm starting to use the 1 1/4 inch outer diameter vinyl, and it's a little, I don't know, a little more space in there, a little more time for it to cure. But anyway, this is powder. I use Strontium Aluminate glowing powder, and just kind of squeeze it in there, and well, not squeeze it in there. Well, I don't know what to call it. I basically, squish some silicone in there, and then pat on some, like a little spudger I use, and then I pat on some powder, and then do it again and again and again and again and again. Actually, I made a little palette for it. I'll show you. Yeah, that's this thing. Little powder palette. Yeah. So got that Strontium Aluminate from one of the eBay sellers in China for like $4, because if you try to buy it at Michael's or online, it's from the States, it's a lot more. So okay, so this is the bloom setup. This will eventually turn up in a bloom light. If you're on my website at all, you know what this is sort of already. So which there's like 6 people, so if you're one of those 6 people, hi. So anyway, yeah, so this is a similar setup. All this takes a few more steps, and so first I actually go with the gelatin in here, and again, this is just the highlighter fluid with the gelatin, and I warm it up and cool this down, and then squeeze that in there. So I do the stems first, and then I do the glue for the flower, and this is what the flame one looks like before I put the gelatin in there. So the top of that flower one is the same as the flame before I put the gelatin. I just said that twice. And yeah, anyway, and then at the bottom I kind of cut out some silicone after it's cured, because that's the thing. I do the stems and then let that cool down to let the gelatin set up, and then I toss in the glue, and I do that in that order because the gelatin does have is a little firmer. It's a fun word, firmer, and yeah, it sets up, and then it helps it so the glue doesn't squish into it, which can be a problem. And I'll show you what happens when that happens, if I can find it. Where is it? Yeah. It's a real disaster. That happens. So very unfortunate, but it is what it is. And this is, I don't know if I can do anything with that. I might be able to, but I'll talk about that later. Yeah. So, next, this one and that one. And, yeah. Oh, and this is just a bigger flame. This is just a bigger, this is the 1 1/4 outer diameter, and you can see a little, I think the separation of the gelatin colors worked a little better, probably because it's just more space to work in. And yeah, I like that. And this, I really should figure out a way to video this, although I'm not sure how to do that because you get pretty messy, and I don't know. Because there's a lot of sort of prodding at the silicone. It never lays in the way you want it to, and some of this is just sort of reacting to what happens when something happens that you didn't expect, which is everything. So you can plan like 3 or 4 steps, and between that you just improvise. So yeah. So anyway, that's another flame. And so next we actually have an experiment that is the first time ever of this. This is similar to the flame and basically the same process, but instead of the glue I used vegetable glycerin, which I read somewhere on some blog. I've been, looked up as much as I could about silicone and just what the hell silicone is and made of, and it's acetoxy silicone, and it's acid cure, although the vinegar, acid is vinegar, so it's not like a scary thing. I don't think that much, although it does smell like hell, and but not, that not that bad. But and I don't know, I've heard that it does irritate people's skin. I probably shouldn't be just touching it the way I am, but I don't care. It doesn't bother me, and it is what it is. And not like I don't do plenty of other unhealthy stuff that, is worse. But yeah, so this is glycerin. Anyway, I read somewhere on something that glycerin has some effect on there's something about drying these things that has to do with, I wish somebody could clarify it for me, because I haven't found any, real definitive explanations, but I have found that acetoxy cure silicone has something to do with, transfer of like water molecules. So it doesn't actually dry the way you'd expect. It actually does the opposite. It gets humid in it. Yeah, that's the scientific way to say that. Human in it is how it happens. So, and actually, I've been trying to figure that out. Obviously I've got the fan in there because I just can't imagine that doesn't help some. And then actually I've tried to set up an experiment where one's similar volume of silicone, one's submerged in water, although maybe submerging has some effect that doesn't allow it to do the transfer. But anywho, I can't figure out how to make it cure any faster than it cures, and it does not cure fast. So yeah, it's a slow process. But anyway, so here's the glycerin. I think at some point I was talking about what I thought glycerin might do, and I've read that it's a surfactant, however you say that. It helps it makes it skin up, on the top, and it does do that, but I'm not sure how much better it does that than water. Because if you just squirt out some silicone and then you run your finger on it, it'll stick to you. But if you wet your finger first and rub it on there, it actually doesn't at all. You can work with it. That's pretty much the whole way I can work with this at all, is just keeping your fingers wet so you don't stick to the stuff. Glycerin does the same thing, although I'm not sure to what degree it does it any better than water does. But the thing that I did notice in messing with it, it seems to have an almost identical index of refraction to silicone. It just matches almost perfectly. So when you put it in there, it almost blends right in. But what that lets me do is, create the little cavities the same way that the glue does and squirt in the color later. And that's what I did here. Now, this one looks crazy, a little weirder because it's not as smooth, because I did kind of go a little nuts jamming it. I went, squishing it from like this, from the top and bottom, And I go nuts in there. I mean, it's all sealed up now, but I really, you know, it's a pretty aggressive process. It's gross, actually, but fun, in a gross way. But yeah, so that's why it looks all smushed up. I think that and the glycerin is slightly thinner than the glue, so it has a tendency to it can sort of poke, whatever. I don't know. It have creases and sharper edges in its in the interface with the silicone. So anyway, blah, 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 yeah. That's the thing. That thing. Now, I do want to show you these. These are just the balsa plane ones, and this is particularly small balsa plane in there. Yeah. And the bulbous thing in there, I sort of convinced myself it's some sort of flower, tulip, orchid thing. But of course it is powder and the silicone. But what I'm doing is I'll show you that too. I'm, I guess, pre-forming the silicone, if that's whatever. So I sort of so here's a couple more there. I don't feel like taking them out of the saran wrap because it's a pain. But those are similar little things that may or may not find their way into other little diorama things. So it's different little techniques you can use. You can, squirt all the silicone out in sort of a flat thing and then sort of drop the powder on it, or you can sort of lay it in with a spudger, or I use little thin things to sort of, I don't know, get it in there. Also made the shocking life decision to purchase glitter online. I don't know how I feel about the fact that I've done that. It came in a purple metallic pouch. I just don't understand why glitter is. But I'm telling you, man, it looks cool as hell in here. So I saw it online, and a lot of the stuff I've been sort of looking into, like the glow powder and stuff, it does share a lot of the market apparently with like nail things. And as you can probably tell from my hand modeling here, I give a shit about nails. But they've actually come up with some pretty interesting materials in that whole process to make people's nails look at better. And I'm, whatever. Anyway, so yeah, so that's my foray into the glitter market. This is another balsa plane one. It's a P38 airframe sort of thing, which really makes zero sense as a glider at all. Could never glide with this sort of, configuration. But you don't really make silicone dioramas to, because it makes sense. So that's what this is. Yeah, and again, the thing under it is, I don't know, I'm a little worried it looks like a coil of poop in a way, but it also does look pretty, and if I hadn't said that, you might not think it does. You might think it looks like a little vortex, little tip of a vortex or something like that. But anyway, that's the plain P38 version. And also this one has, it's hard to see, but there's a little runners up the sides. And what those are is little drips and little drops of silicone that I used, and then just drop some powder and then stick it in there. So you sort of, you do build these little dioramas, but the silicone, because it does such a good job of sort of self-healing, I don't know, it's a little bit forgiving optically. It's sort of, you can cure silicone for a week and then stick it in some silicone that, fresh silicone, and it seems like it remains pretty optically clear. Here's another one. This one I took like a little slab of pre-cured silicone and cut strips out of it and then bent them over so it looked like little trails and stuff, etc. Yeah, I like this one a lot for some reason. And the little frames are 3D printed. They're pretty simple, and then they this is actually a flat sheet of plastic Fresnel lens that I wrap around there and use this back thing to sort of lock it in there. It's actually two pieces, one on the inside, one on the outside, so it keeps it kind of snug in there. Yeah, so, and this is actually different. This is not Fresnel. This is a 1 7/8 inch vinyl tube that I did because I thought that would be good to do, but I don't think I'm going to do too many of these because mainly the thickness of the vinyl, it doesn't give you as much space to work in as the Fresnels do, because there's less of material. But also because cutting these things is just a massive pain. I have not figured out an effective way to cut vinyl precisely and without the ever-present threat of opening up, you know, my skin. So, yeah. I don't think I actually got to this one, and I did want to talk about this one because this one's an interesting little study in this whole silicone adventure. Silicone is a very interesting medium, and I think some of it's I'm rationalizing it because I just started using it because I just, you know, I had it, and I don't know, had an idea. It started with the warp tube things, and I wanted to make warp coils, and, you know, I had it, I tried it, and then I started realizing other things you could do with it, and so now I'm rationalizing what a cool material I decided to use because I'm so awesome, you know. But at the same time, it does have some interesting things, and this is a little piece that I think actually demonstrates a little bit of how this process is, because this actually started as one of these, and unfortunately became quickly, well, not quickly, it took a couple of days, it became this. It squirted in there. I was trying to do something to even out the ends, and I screwed it up, and probably could have saved myself a lot of trouble, but then I wouldn't be talking about it, so what fun would that be? Yeah, so, yeah, it's hard to explain everything that went on in this because there's a lot going on, and none of it really looks that cool. Some of it's part of an experiment. But the point of this was that working with silicone, you sort of, you know, you just react to it, and you just kind of, that's what's fun about this, is I'm not really, it's so much of it is just finding out what happened just now, what just happened, and then what happened is it turns out to be kind of cool to look at sometimes. But the more you plan, you know, precision or whatever, then it's not going to work. So, because what happened here again, I just sort of the gelatin and the glue mixed, and then at first I abandoned it, and then I thought, you know, we'll do some experiments with it because that's a good, you know, it is. I don't want to waste all the silicone. It does seem like a lot. So I think what I did first was just squirted some glycerin in there, and you know, made a new little channel in there. And then I started just really, you know, squishing around the silicone to try to extend out these lines and these ribbons as much as possible to sort of make them, because it has, you know, good texture if you can get it a nice thin layer, and because it's three-dimensional, I don't know, it looks cool. And then at some point I decided to jam the blue in there and squirt that, and that worked. But and it's, you know, I wish I'd shown this, but I haven't figured out how I'm going to film this process with just, you know, effectively without it getting in my way. But you know, at certain times it was filling up with air, and so this is what happened here in this big green blob. It kept filling up with air. Once it fills up with air, the air wants to stay in there, so you have to squeeze it out, and then I jammed it in some water so it would pull the water out into it, and then I could at least fill it up with something other than air, because air's, I think it's just the interface, the index of refraction of, you know, air is too different from silicone, but water is close enough to where it's sort of still, you know, but air in there, it just looks, I don't know, it looks wrong. Air bubbles look wrong, bubbles of other stuff kind of look kind of cool, you know. But yeah, so that's the silicone. It's I'm obviously getting way too philosophical about something you get from the hardware store, but it's a very interesting material, and it sort of tests my patience, but also sort of strokes the right part of my OCD. It's very interesting. So thought I'd share some of what I figured out about it, at least in spoken and showing form. But yeah, so I've been talking and showing for about 20 minutes, so I guess that's it. I'm not sure I feel like editing any of this, so it is what it is, and if you like it, you like it. If not, do not subscribe, do not like, I don't give a shit. Just go to the hardware store and get some silicone and mess with it, and then if you make a video about it, let me see it, because I want to see what other people do with it.